Hey y'all, welcome to Parent Power with Mandy Drogin. I'm Mandy. I'm just a mom sitting down having real conversations with real Texas parents about what's going on in our state. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by the Texas Education Agency's new Inspector General of Educator Misconduct. Levi Fuller has joined the team. He's a former military man serving our country in the Army, fighting against ISIS. He's also fought against sexual predators in the military, and now he's here to serve our kids to get the pervs out and lift up our great educators and improve our system. Levi, thanks for being here.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, welcome to TEA. I'm not there, but I feel like that we're always, watching and trying to serve them. And so you have been a serviceman for many years. I mentioned serving our country. So I really want to start there. Let's hear about your background, and then we'll get into why you were selected out of everybody across the state of Texas to come in and get these educators, the pervs, those that are using coercion or other tactics to stifle excellent education, protect those that are mismanaging money. How did you get on this path from the beginning?
It's been a pretty long and weird road. I'm a graduate of Lufkin High School, so I'm a public school kid myself. Right out of high school, I enlisted as an artilleryman. I was reclassed as infantry, and then kind of worked my way up to being a judge advocate. I have been across the world. I've been a bunch of different places. I was the legal advisor for Hurricane Harvey for the North American contingent of the Army out of Fort Hood. Went to Kosovo. My unit, 3rd Brigade, did a stint fighting ISIS. I was a legal advisor for NATO for some time. So I had a broad career, but part and parcel of that, during my career, I had a lot of experience with, unfortunately, sex assault. And during that time period, I had the unfortunate benefit of working with the Department of Defense Sexual Assault Prevention and Response Office, the Office of the Army Judge Advocate General, and some senators, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Ted Cruz, Senator Martha McSally. And I'd given them kind of lessons from the field that I think they weren't getting from anywhere else, of like, here's the things that we need to do, because the Army had already we were going through what schools are going through right now.
Yeah.
I got out of the Army in 2019. I wanted to stay close to Fort Hood. My wife and I did. And Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, was hiring for election integrity prosecutors. So I did that. That was a whole different topic. But I prosecuted election integrity offenses all the way up until a little bit after the Stevens decision that took away our jurisdiction. And then I moved over to, Consumer Protection Division, but a special litigation and nonprofit enforcement. And from there, I kind of made my bones going after, border non-government entities, border NGOs that were alleged to have been trafficking and smuggling children. So, Annunciation House, Catholic Charities Rio Grande Valley. And then, obviously a lot of stuff was going on in the world, but at that point I'd kind of hit my limit on just the way the world was working. So I had a boss a long time ago. He always said, you either argue the law or you argue to change it. And I took that literally. I was talking to, Ken Paxton's senior advisor, Michelle Smith, and I was like, you know what? We just need to fix this whole system. And she says, have you ever heard of Andy Hopper? So I go, I met him. He was a real Texan, and obviously this isn't an endorsement. I work for the TEA. This is just Levi talking.
It's your experience.
But his platform was basically my resume. And so I was like, you know what, let's go lump in with him. And, it was a phenomenal experience working in the legislature. I think we did a great thing. I think we did a lot of good stuff. Andy's, an amazing human being. His family's amazing. Just a quick side note, his wife actually brought toys for my little kids for the days I had to work late. So that was awesome. And then we get to here. I get a phone call from, I won't say where it's from, but I get a phone call from the commissioner, Mike Morath. And it was so funny because he actually called me on Thursday and I just didn't pick up. It's a normal day. Calls me on Friday and I didn't know who it was. I answered the phone. Levi Fuller, Andy Hopper's office. He goes, Levi Fuller, this is Mike Morath, TEA. And I was like, the commissioner? And anyway, he, we were actually talking about a new bill, SB 571, that we'll get into, I'm sure, about that kind of enhances a lot of the TEA's powers and ability to go after bad actors. We're talking about that. We talked about, we had a conversation about how the Army had done the sexual assault thing, how, look, these are the mistakes that I learned while we were doing it. This is what I would suggest your organization does. And then at the end, he goes, hey, we're opening up this new position. Would you be interested in applying? And, it's a competitive position. And I, basically asked him, I was like, well, what do you need? And he says, I need a crusader that's going to go through and get all these bad people out of schools. And, I have children that are in public school. Mm-hmm. That was it. I mean, that was the selling point.
That was it.
And so I applied and competed with whoever else applied, and here I am.
Well, we're grateful to have it. That is a lot of information to unpack, and let's do that. So you're a father with kids in public schools, and I have kids in a public charter school, and there's obviously 5.5 million kids in our public school system, and I don't think anyone can deny that we have a real crisis. It seems like every week there is a new either showing cover up by leadership or new pervert that's exposed in the education system. And to be clear, the vast majority, 99% of the teachers in our education system are not that. But the reality is that we clearly have a crisis, like you said, was in the military. And you were brought in and learned what was going on in the military. And as a crusader, as Commissioner Rath said, you helped put policies in place. So let's go there first. What did you learn in the military about what was essentially facilitating? I won't say causing, because of course our excellent servicemen and women were not causing anything. But unfortunately, there are bad people everywhere. And if they are in these positions, oftentimes positions of power, they exploit that and bad things are happening. So what did you learn that you can bring to the state of Texas?
Right. And, I do want to, it's important to say, like you pointed out, we have the best teachers. I'm a Texan. Texas is a state of mind. We have the best teachers in the country.
Yeah.
Full stop, across the board. We got people that they work their tail end off. They deal with a lot of stuff, and they are out there every single day. I grew up with teachers. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for public schools.
Yep.
And from across the board, educators, coaches, everything.
Yeah.
I had some of the best Lufkin High School football coaches out there. Todd Quick, Outlaw, great guys. But that being said, it's a small fraction of a percentage. Like we have 375,000 certified educators in the state of Texas. And, if you go through the numbers, I think we're looking at 12,500 hits, 2,500 sexual hits. That's a like a percentage of a fraction or fraction of a percentage.
But one is too many, right? That's the mission.
That's exactly it.
And the one is too many, and we're going after them.
That's right. That's right. We are going to purge. Basically, what we have is we have a tumor, and we're going to cut it out.
That's right.
And in the Army, the thing is like you have to put it in camera, right? So what we're seeing right now is we're seeing a huge spike, which is awful. It's terrible to see that number.
Yeah.
The good news here, if there is any, is that that's because of the 88th legislative session and the new reporting requirements. And I don't want to alarm anybody, but this has been going on. What's happening now is now we know about it. Now we can act on it. We can excise this. And that's what we had in the Army. I can literally tell you is 2013, 2014, where our numbers were going through the roof. Now, but just knowing about it.
Sexual assaults.
Sexual assaults. That's right. Reported sexual assaults. Because we'd had a crisis where people weren't reporting it. It wasn't coming in. Not only, the victims, and in this case, it's children, right? You're going to report that your teacher did this, a very popular teacher in the school. And, we could go into all the psychology of that. It's awful and horrendous. Probably your your viewers probably don't want to do that, for this segment, but, that's a hard thing for a victim to do, especially a child. That isn't immeasurable. Adults have a hard time doing it. So you got the first part is getting the reports, getting the knowledge. We're there now. The next part is, what are we going to do to fix the problem? And one thing that I saw in the Army was there was a lot of, there'd be a lot of victim blaming on occasion. There'd be a lot of like, well, I don't know, this guy's really great or this girl's really great. We don't want to go after it. That's going to be number one. It's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they did. It doesn't matter how long they taught. It doesn't matter what they're going to do in the future if they get to stay in this position, they hurt a child,
Right.
they are done.
Yeah.
That is the end.
Done. Out of our school system, their license pulled here in Texas.
That's it.
You're gone.
That's right.
It doesn't matter if you live like a saint. If you assault someone, particularly a child in our education system, you're gone.
That's right.
Pack up and leave.
And part of that's the psychology of numbers.
Yeah.
You know, again, not trying to be alarmist, but the way this kind of works out is you'll have one report, but you might have 2 to 3 other instances that don't get reported. Now,
Right.
if you take a look at the potential social impact of this for every child, we have 5.5 million kids in the Texas school systems. We have about 2,500 kids that I think have been reported for that are victims of sexual offenses. 2,500, you know, the majority of them are going to have 2 parents. You multiply that number by that, and then you think about the unreported cases, multiply that by 3 to 10. That's how many people could be being affected by this right now. And it's by a very small portion of bad actors.
Yeah.
And the number needs to be 0.
Zero.
That's 100% right. Now, I don't want to go too much into how we're going to fix that. I know exactly how the Army fixed it and how we finally got there.
Yep.
And we're going to truncate that process. We're not going to take 17 years of, you know, congressional hearings to figure it out. We're just going to go right to it. But I don't want to go too much into detail on that.
That's okay.
People are going to see it soon.
But a crusader that has fought ISIS, has fought sexual predators within our military, is now leading the Inspector General's position at the TEA to go fight against perverts. I love it. I think this is amazing. Get them out. The next step, once we get them out of the schools and strip away their license, something that you're going to be doing, which is incredibly exciting, is sending this on to actual law enforcement. It's no longer that we're going to just say, sweep it under the rug, pretend like Mr. So-and-so, this didn't happen, send him off on his way. You are going to be partnering or working with and exchanging information with law enforcement to ensure that prosecutions actually happen, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to close the daylight between us and law enforcement. If we get a case somehow that's been reported by schools, we are going to report it to law enforcement. That needs to happen immediately. And the reason why is because you want to have that evidence preserved. You don't want to re-traumatize victims.
Right.
Right. And it's hard. It's hard to give that statement. It's hard to talk about it. So we're going to make sure that law enforcement gets first crack. I'm going to be meeting with some police chiefs coming up. I'm going to be kind of traveling to say, what are ways we can help you get this done? On the other side of that, whenever law enforcement now, because of the new bill that come out, the SB 579, whenever law enforcement makes an arrest, that goes into a fingerprint database. Now, normally we would always get the hit on it, but it would be left up to the school district to take action on it. That's not going to happen anymore. If you are fingerprinted and it's a certain type of offense, you automatically go into the pipeline to be adjudicated whether or not you're going to be on the do not hire list. And the standard is, are you under investigation right now?
Are you under investigation? And so what you're saying is if you go into, you called it a pipeline, if you are identified as having a credible report of an impropriety, sexual, financial, whatever it is, you're going to go in. Are you removed from the classroom?
It'll be sexual for sure.
Yep.
And if you are arrested for a sexual offense with a child, especially with a child, you will be removed. You'll go through the pipeline. You'll have a chance to present in front of the State Board of Educator certifications. You'll also have you'll have a chance to present your side of the story. But if that is confirmed at SBEC, you are out. You are do not hire. And you will be such until the end of your criminal disposition. You're out of the schools.
Great.
It is over for you. And, on that note, it would very much behoove. The other thing I want to mention is that failure to report now is a felony offense. So anyone that knows of any whisper, rumor, anything in your school, now's the time to handle it because it's going to be a broad strokes approach.
Let's get into that. So if you are in the education system, whether you are a teacher, an administrator, a staff member, a trustee, if you hear something, you have a duty to report.
That's absolutely true.
So, and that's been the case. But what we've seen is, no, that's coach's kid, or that's, a beloved teacher. They've been here for 25 years, and there has been a failure to actually follow through with that duty that is in case law. So what you are saying is now there is actually a ramification, and we can see this right now. There are administrators that are being prosecuted under this, which is wonderful. If you knew and you did not report for one reason or another, then what is happening?
I mean, everything. You could be criminally prosecuted.
Okay.
You could be removed. You can have your teacher certified. I mean, we're talking full life-changing events. If you may go to jail, you may not. We at the TEA, we don't prosecute criminal cases, but you have a very high likelihood of having to find another career, no matter how that shakes out.
Yeah.
It very much behooves. If you've heard a whisper, a rumor, anything, it very much behooves you to handle it.
Are there any prosecutions going on right now on this?
There are a couple. I can't go into detail about some of those. They're still pending. But there are a couple out there right now.
Good. We've seen them in the news, and our viewers can check them out. You can see it's good that we're saying no longer can you help cover this up, because I do think that has been, as a parent and as someone in the education space for well over a decade, we've all heard, we've all seen, and we know that there is unfortunately been some incentive to sweep things under the rug, ignore, move things on. And that is where kind of the pass the trash
That's right.
Has occurred, is just either shoo them out or pretend like it didn't happen or victim blame or whatever. So I think it is a huge step forward that the state of Texas has recognized. We can no longer incentivize allowing predators to move from school to school or district to district, that there is going to be responsibility and accountability on the predator, but there's also accountability on anyone that did not remove them from access to a child.
That's right. And I want to back up too. I want to say, first week, my team, the team that goes in front of SBEC, they pulled the certifications on that note of teachers that have been arrested. They pulled the certifications somewhere between 35 and 38.
Right now. So you're day 4 at the time of filming.
Yeah.
And so you're saying that within the first 4 days that your team has already pulled how many?
Somewhere between 35 to 38, I think.
Educators, and said, you're out.
They're on
no
the
more.
D&H. Yep.
And then what happens when you go on the do not hire list?
You can't work in a school. And I want to give credit to the SBEC, the State Board of Education certifications, educator certifications, that's led by Madam Chair Dvorak. They're the ones that make the final determination. My team presents the case to them, but that's it. You're on the D&H. You cannot work for a school in any capacity. You're done.
Good.
So
all of these people are out.
They're out.
Praise
38,
God.
first week, moving on. Yep.
Keep it going. Okay, so let's talk about it's educator misconduct. We've really focused on what is obviously your expertise, and that is getting predators away from the public. In particular, now you're going to be in charge with getting them away from children. So I know that I can speak for the rest of Texans and say thank you, and we'll be praying for you, because this is so important, that we truly take care of this just absolutely abhorrent issue that has continued to crop up. And like you said, it's not new. It's been going on for decades. But something, I'm not sure what it is, it does feel like something is occurring where it's occurring more often.
Yeah, I don't know. It could be, I have seen some, I don't want to speculate too much. I have seen some instances where, there are these individuals that have this sickness and they're in chat rooms.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Bad actors, rather than go into the whole conspiracy of who's coordinated with whom, bad actors will always go towards the path of least resistance.
Right.
Always. Yep. Every single time. So if there is a school that maybe there's a bad actor already there and he's like, yeah, I've been doing this and I've got there's one that's been reported, like I think it was like Winsboro, where you have 2 superintendents and their behavior has been abhorrent. Yeah. They're going to jail for a long time. But you can see how they both fed off of each other. Like there was no accountability there.
Right.
And so that is something that and I know that there are a lot of really, again, I want to touch on, we have some of the best school districts in the world. I know that there's some that know that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that know that. But that really is the broken windows issue. If you let a little thing go like that, it'll turn into a big thing very quickly. And one thing I do want to mention is because it's been asked before, is Salina ISD. We can confirm that we do have an investigation going on in that whole system, because one of the questions that we got was, well, what about their internal investigation? Look, I'm not going to turn away evidence. Give it to us. We'll take a look at it, but that's not probative.
Right.
We're the TEA.
Right.
This is our bailiwick. This is our house.
Yeah. Good. So I do want to touch on that, because something that I have seen be abused is the ISD police departments. So when you are working with and going after any of these predators with actual legitimate claims against them, do you have the authority? You're working with law enforcement outside of the ISD police departments as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That
Good.
is. And the ISD police departments are a unique animal just because of their reporting structure.
They report to the superintendents, which is a huge problem. I will say, I'm not putting this on you. This is my words, not his. ISD police departments are not a good thing because they report to the superintendent. And as you have just noted, there are unfortunately people in leadership positions that have worked to squash some of these concerns. So my words, not Levi's, but this is a problem that Texas, I really do hope the 90th legislature will look at the incentive structure and that we should not have law enforcement that are not reporting to the public into actual legal entities. A superintendent is placed there as an executive and they should not have the ultimate decision. So that's Mandy Drogin's take, not yours, but I do hope that someone will take that up.
Well, I'm cautiously optimistic with the ISDs, just like I'm cautiously optimistic with anything. And and to say that with with the police departments, because I've seen local police officers, I've seen some very good law enforcement officers get tunnel vision and make mistakes all the time. I'm not saying anything about that, but what I would say too, though, is that we're going to be doing a multifunctional approach to this. So
okay.
if let's say you do have an ISD police officer who he knows something's wrong and he's unable to action it, we have and this is something actually for anybody, for all parents need to know that if they Google Texas Education Agency complaints, there is a website for them to report. So we would encourage, look, if you want to go after the bad guy and you're not being allowed to do it, no matter what your position is,
right, let
us know. Teacher, administrator, ISD police. But I am hopeful that I'm hopeful, and I'll say I'm confident that the ISD police are going to work with us on it.
That's good. Again, I'll say 99% is great, but there are some times when I'm like, that is something's fishy about what's going on there. Okay, so you actually just said you can Google TEA complaints, so that if you have a complaint that you see something, say something, you can do that. How far can you all look back? So if we're a parent or a teacher or whatever, and we say, we know that something's gone on and it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, but that teacher's still there. Is there a statute of limitations on when these reports can come in?
That's a good question. I'd like to research that a little bit more, but I would say, look, I think at this point, just report it, because we go through all of those.
Yep.
And some of them, there may not be anything we can do. It may not, it may not rise to the level of criminal complaint, but we also have as a backstop, we have the Educator Code of Ethics. So there may be something in there. Now, in the Educator Code of Ethics, I'll get back to you on what the
That's fine. Yeah. I don't expect it was kind of one of those things. We're saying report it. If you saw something, report it. Still say something.
Because we need to. That's the thing is, and I know that you'll see stuff on social media or whatever.
Yeah.
We need it to come through that port because we don't know.
Yep.
So, but if we know about it, we can do something about it.
Good. Okay, that's great, because I do think that I've heard this before. I've had parents talk to me and say this. Even a decade ago when my kid was there, it was rumored that so and so was engaging in this. And from what I know, and you as an expert probably know more, if they do it once, they've done it usually before.
That's usually the concern,
right?
I mean, I've seen. I've seen a lot of cases where that's usually what it is. They've done it once, they got away with it, they do it again.
Yep.
Or they've done it once and they're gonna do it again.
Yeah.
It's just a sickness.
So if you see or saw something, say something. Go to TEA complaints. You can Google it, and it'll pull up where that you can send in whatever information that you have, so that you all can actually investigate.
Right.
That's fantastic. All right. So Inspector General of Educator Misconduct, that is not just getting sexual predators out of our school system, although that is certainly at the top of the list for every parent like you and I that has children in it. But other malfeasance occurs as well. So can we talk about the other scope of what you guys will be looking at in terms of bad behavior, which does unfortunately happen sometimes? So what other topics will you all be looking at?
Well, so we have a very robust Educator Code of Ethics that I think everybody at this point should be very aware of. They should be on notice of it. So there are some events that are going on right now, and I would highly encourage people to review that.
Okay.
Because even if something doesn't rise to the level of a criminal complaint, and again, whenever it does, we'll work with local law enforcement, make sure those people go to jail quick.
Yeah.
Because that makes our process easier, and that's the right thing to do. But even if it doesn't rise to that level, it can still fall within the TEA's purview. We have a code of ethics. We expect educators to follow that code, and you could still get teed up for violating it. So, you can kind of, I don't want to go into too many current events, but you can kind of insert here, blank here.
Right.
So.
Using I'll go into them, using credit cards to take out cash advances, directing funds to private entities that you might have relationships with, all of that stuff. So financial or any other impropriety, if you see it, you can say something to the TEA,
right.
and you all now have the ability to actually investigate. And a team, right? You have a team.
We have a team. We have, and everybody's really rowing in the same direction. It's been very awesome. The commissioner's been very supportive, giving me a lot of assets.
Yeah.
We've got enough to get started now. But here's the thing. I want to emphasize this. It's going to be a learning process. I'm the first one.
Yeah.
So bear with me. There's not exactly a manual, so we're going to be building it out, and we're going to take feedback as we go.
Great.
I've talked to one of the things, the entire agency, I think, or several members of the agency have read the Texas Ed 911 report. That thing is amazing.
Yes.
I have it tabbed out. Our chief of investigations, he's read it 17 times. They did a great job. And even before, whenever this...
Plug it again.
The Texas Ed 911.
Yep.
Their report that they issued. I can't remember the exact title. I just know I have it in a big binder on my desk. It's phenomenal. So even whenever this was coming up, whenever this idea was approached or brought to my attention, I reached out to them first.
Good.
Hey, is this something that can be fixed with this? And they were excited that it was going to be me. I hope not to let them down, but we are going to be incorporating as many of those. We are going to be limited in some of the things we can do, but we're going to be incorporating as many of their suggestions as we possibly can. And if we can't get them, we're going to figure out why. Like it has to be, we have to find the answer. Why can't we do this? Or what does this look like? Or how do we get the middle ground there?
I love to hear that. It goes back to what you first said. You either defend the law or you look for ways to change the law. So you just said, if we can't get them, we need to figure out why we can't get them. If someone is clearly doing something that is harmful to children, the education system, the taxpayers, Texas as a whole, to be able to look into it and figure out what are they using, what tactics are they using to manipulate or get around the laws.
That's right. And we have, right now we've got a legislature. We were talking about.
They're amazing.
They're amazing. They're ready to go. And, the bill, giving a plug to Representative Little, his bill removing sovereign immunity, that's something that these school districts need to be on notice of. It's look, if we have to get involved, there's going to be a paper trail. There's going to be a lot of information. If you guys handle that, then, you can mitigate a lot of the pain.
Right.
But if we have to get involved, it's going to get worse from there because there is no sovereign immunity for certain offenses anymore.
Obviously, Representative Little is a phenomenal attorney, and he goes after bad actors. And she asked him something about the school choice bill is why would private schools be exempt from this? And he just popped back at her and said, they've never had sovereign immunity, and I know that because I have gone after them if they do this. So the reality is that for whatever reason, there was a carve out that school districts, for one reason or another, had what's called sovereign immunity, and they couldn't be sued by parents. And so if you were a victim, there wasn't a whole lot of recourse. Teachers were protected by the system, by the unions, by the associations, and now Representative Little said that is wrong, and he went after it, and he changed that law where now, as you said, school districts can now be found liable if they hire somebody that is engaging in this. So I think that is a huge change to the way that this system has worked for decades, really, where to some degree, I think that predators felt empowered because they could lean back on the system, the associations, the lawyers that were going to protect them. And so I think it's a huge deal. Great shout out to Representative Little for doing that, because it really will change the way that I think that ISDs engage with you and your office.
That's right. It is very much like, at the end of the day, if the law enforcement can't get you, if we can't get you, the parents still can.
Yeah.
A monumental shift. And yeah, what it was is, school districts are part of the state, so state has sovereign immunity. And so it's very hard to pierce that veil to get a suit against them. But that's they enjoy a lot of privileges that the private schools don't have. The private schools are, independent. They don't have the sovereign immunity.
Just a regular business.
They can be sued.
Yep.
That is no longer the case.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of school districts. This really does not apply to most of them. They're going to be like, yeah, we're reporting whatever comes through.
Right. Of course.
But to the ones that are skeptical about it, do not try that out.
Right.
Like, do the right thing the first time.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. So say it again. For legal and criminal and financial reasons, I want to hear this again. School districts and leaders.
Yeah. School districts and for all the reasons.
Yeah.
Clean your house.
Yes.
And clean it now.
Yes.
If you know about something, go ahead and report it. Get it in. It's not getting any better. Clean it now. Get it done.
Okay. I think that's a huge thing. Can we go back to the educator code of conduct where we're talking about the expectations? Is there a difference between what's expected of administrative leaders, those with financial access versus teachers, or is the code of conduct just covers everybody? If you are in a school system, here are all the expectations and demands.
It covers everybody. You do have two levels of certification. You have administrative certification, you have a teacher certification that's underneath. But if you are on the D&H, that applies to everything. Like, you just can't work. It doesn't matter what level you are. So, but we expect if you're part of a school district, this is something that we should really touch on. There's going to be some criticism that we're targeting teachers, that we're attacking schools. I completely disagree. I view teaching as one of the greatest professions out there, but I use that word profession. It's not a job. It's not a gig. It's not a side project. It's a profession. And in order to have a great profession, you have to have accountability. Whenever you have this massive number of fantastic people out there doing their jobs, and you've got this small fraction of people doing horrendous things, you excise that group, you hold them accountable, you have colleagues holding each other accountable, it makes the profession grow.
Yeah.
So that being said, the code of ethics is the code that the profession is expected to abide by in this thing. And it's a position of trust.
Right.
Just like a lawyer, just like a banker, you have the most important resource Texas has to offer. That's our kids. That's the most important thing we have. That's the future. Yeah. So you should be held to a higher standard.
Right. I love that point. Could not agree more. And that's it. Because I hear this all the time about even when we're pushing reforms across the board, whether it was providing school choice, pushing for open enrollment policies, pushing for retention policies, pushing for anything that we have as the parent empowerment movement that is there with voices from across the spectrum, public school, public charter, private school parents, homeschool parents, whatever. And it's a profession. It is a calling for great teachers. And when we're pointing out and shining a light on the problems, it's not to denigrate the profession. It's to say, we see the bad actors and we want to actually serve and partner with you, great teachers, and get those out.
That's it.
They shouldn't be there casting a shadow over the great people that have committed their lives to serving their communities and their kids. It should be about saying, we're here to help remove these bad actors, remove these predators, remove these that seek to manipulate or to take advantage of a system that's there to serve our students and our communities.
That's right. And and it's going to help the profession, it's going to help schools across the board.
Yeah.
Because you've got a lot of parent unrest, right? We're seeing it. And we're seeing people go back and forth and sniping each other, and it's like, look, let's just level the bubble. Let's get the bad actors out. Yeah. Everybody get back to teaching, and then parents will come along and they'll be okay with it.
So I want to talk about a little bit about, we're talking about what's going on in schools. And a lot of the stuff that we see in the news is about what is occurring inside the school walls or on the campus or on trips or on school buses or whatever. But does that educator code of conduct, I assume it transfers outside of when you're in the classroom. There are standards and expectations that teachers have to meet outside of the classroom, not just teachers, leaders, administrators, whatever. Is that the case? Is there situations where if someone is behaving inappropriately and a community member, a parent sees someone getting a DUI or getting arrested for other stuff, do you have the ability, if a parent reports this and says, this happened. So-and-so was arrested for maybe not inappropriate behaviors with a child, but is arrested for domestic abuse or is arrested for DWIs or whatever it is. Do you all have the authority, or is it strictly related to, with the code of conduct, what goes on school time and property?
No, it's everywhere. Now, what I will say is, I don't want to go into too much detail on that because there's some pending litigation that's going to be coming up that's going to really answer the question of what our authorities are. But no, it's everywhere. There have been some things that have happened off campus or have been in people's, private lives
Yes.
that, reflect poorly upon the profession as a whole.
Yeah.
But I do want to point out, things like, a DWI.
Yeah.
You're going to get fingerprinted, and that's going to come to the TEA, and that's immediately we're going to be notified of it. Now, and then from there, it goes into the different buckets of what we can or cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, again, and I would encourage anybody to just report it. Now, obviously, it's got to have a process. We have to go through the State Office of Administrative Hearings, so we need evidence. We need witnesses. We've got a fantastic team of trial attorneys. I've met with them. They're awesome, and they're ready to go. But that being said, if you know about it, report it.
That's great. That is fantastic, because I do think, obviously, you're a pillar of the community and you do represent. And I think we're seeing that even more. I know that there's investigations going on, for example, with the Charlie Kirk murder and the way that teachers and leadership behaved after that, some of their pretty inflammatory comments. And I know just recently we had all of these protests that I think the original public statement was that this was just student-led and organized. But what we're seeing is it appears that there's a lot of help on behalf of leadership and or teachers at districts. Are you all planning to look into all of those cases as well?
I'll say that is probably a very high likelihood. I won't confirm anything at this time, but yes, we've received reports on that, and every report will be reviewed.
Okay, great. Well, I knew the governor said, I'm going to direct the TEA to look at it. So I'm sure that was when you're coming up on your first week on the job. It was like, oh boy,
It all went off the rails the Friday before I started. So, which is
bless your heart.
But hey, we're here for it.
But you're there for it.
I'm here for it. The team's here for it. Let's go.
Can you explain, since I want to commend the commissioner for creating this position, bringing you in, seeking someone out that has your phenomenal experience as a serviceman and doing this in the military, and then being able to bring it here to Texas because we need it. But how does this differ? Because in theory, parents or teachers could have reported stuff to the TEA before, right? Mm. Can you explain why this is different than what has occurred in the past historically? Because I know that I heard, and this was not necessarily from anybody specifically in TEA or anything, but it was just kind of this understanding that there was not enough manpower. They didn't have the resources. You get flooded with reports and things like that. So explain why that this new role that you're in as Inspector General, why this is different and what this does. Not just that you're going to actually bring accountability and partner with law enforcement to get predators out of our schools, but why is this different from before? Why should parents and patriots all across Texas say, oh, this is a new day?
Well, there's a couple of things that are going to be pretty, they're just little factoids. And number one is having that new power whenever someone is arrested to automatically go into the D&H pipeline temporarily.
Yep.
That's a new fix versus in the past, TA would get notified of it, but then, it's like, well, it's still local control. So now we have that in.
Okay.
But internally, the commissioner, funding sources have changed from SBEC to GR. So the commissioner has, been very helpful in the sense of he's like, just fix the problem. Yeah. Like, that's it. Let's get it done. Good. So I can realign. I'm getting, my own staff. We're hiring new positions. I'm realigning my team and figuring out what works. Some things we're looking at is outreach versus not just having attorneys and paralegals. We're going to have outreach. We're going to have people that can coordinate with people that are on the ground. Another thing too, because I know I think there were 7 bills to create an independent inspector general. They didn't pass.
Right.
But what the commissioner has also done is he's brought in someone with very little education experience, a lot of prosecutorial experience, a lot of policy experience, not a lot of education experience. So in a sense, I'm not part of this, whatever this system is.
Yeah.
It's an independent executive review. It'll be a team that has got the resources it needs. And then from there, the other thing, I think that this is something that a lot of state agencies try to do, and we don't do it well, is we're going to be taking feedback as we go.
Great.
Where are we missing? And I have no personal feelings about it. Like I said, I'm the first one. I'm going to do my best. But if there's something we need to fix, I need to know about it. Let me take a look. And at the very least, I can have an honest conversation with you about why I can't do it.
I think that's amazing. Thank you for your humility in saying we're going and I'm gonna fight and do everything I can, but also feedback is welcome from those that are on the ground and experiencing whatever it is going on. I also want to commend the commissioner for you noted something that I think is really important for people to understand. You, with Representative Andy Hopper and lots of great leaders within the legislature, really saw the need for this position, right? And 7 bills were put forth. They did not make it through. I would blame the Big Ed cartel and their massive horde of lobbyists that just scurry around the Capitol all the time to try and kill the bills. But I think it's important because I commend the commissioner for saying, you know what? I have the authority and I'm going to do it anyways. I don't need the legislature to pass this. Now, maybe as you get into this, maybe that will require more funding or more inspectors, more attorneys and whatever. I suspect that it will. And maybe they'll jump on board and get legislation passed. But I do think it is a huge sign of recognizing the need to take back control of the education system for our students, our great educators, and the parents that are trusting them to be around their kids. So just congratulations to you for taking this job, and great job to Commissioner Morath for seeing the need and saying, I'm gonna do it anyways. I don't care what the politics are. So before we wrap up here, I want you to look in that camera right there, and I want you to tell the parents of Texas what you're going to do to protect their kids. And I want you to send a message to the predators that have infiltrated. Though they're a small percentage, I want you to tell them that you're coming after them and what they need to do to get out of our schools and get away from our kids. Right there.
What I will tell the parents is that I've got kids that are in public school. I'm going to view every single one of these allegations like it happened to my kid. I'm going to do the best I can. And what I'll tell anybody that is out there right now and you've done something that you shouldn't have done, you're going to need to come forward, because if I find out, it's going to be a lot worse.
Levi, thank you for taking on this crucial mission for parents and for kids, most importantly, putting yourself in the role of being a crusader. I love that you were tapped to be the crusader for kids in our public school system to get bad actors out. Thank you for joining us today on Parent Empowerment with Mandy Drogin, and now you have the power.